All right. We are live.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Sounds like there's something like dripping in the background, though.
You can hear that? It's my ice maker.
Yeah, I can hear it.
That's crazy. That's like way across the room. Let me go unplug it. Hold on a second. Is that better? Is it gone now?
Yeah, it seems better. Yeah, it's gone now. Yeah. So
That's crazy. You can hear that? Wow. Fine. I guess there's no ice. No ice to be had.
yeah, so I cleared my browser history, so we're not live on Instagram tonight. YouTube and Twitter. I can't get into Instagram.
It's all right. It's an exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah, Wholesale Wednesday. It's a freaking busy day today.
Yeah, it's been
back to back. Yeah. Traditionally, we always worked in the past like 15 hours a day on Wednesdays, and now it's like 12.
I mean, the focus has been different. I mean, Wednesday is just like a good day of the week for everything. I mean, if you're doing outreach, it's a good day of the week. If you're just, whatever it is, it's right in the middle of the week. Everyone else is focused because, like in our business, a lot of times we're relying on other people, whether it's companies or whoever, to get things done.
Yeah.
So Wednesday, everyone seems to want to work.
It's smack in the middle of the week. Ideal outreach days, we were talking about this, are like Tuesday through Thursday. You could reach out on Mondays, but like generally we found the most effective times for outreach to be Tuesdays and through Thursdays. Fridays are kind of tough just because everybody's getting ready to leave, go home for the week.
Yeah, I used to do my outreach a lot more on those days. Now I kind of just now it's actually I still do some outreach on Fridays and whatnot. It just depends on the time of day, the company you call. But I mean, just like general thing. Yeah, if you're just starting, I mean, you want to put yourself in the best position to succeed, right? So reaching out at the beginning of the week or middle of the week when you have your best chance of someone actually being receptive to what you have to say, I feel like sets you up for success.
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them here in the chat. We'll answer them as they come in.
Yeah, we have a YouTube video that we're putting out that's just honest thoughts about selling on Amazon, and kind of the more of the stigma I think that you get, or how to approach that thing, kind of more of a mindset type of deal. But then we also have one coming out on shipping to Amazon, full guide on an LTL or SPD shipments. So if you guys are not following the YouTube channel, please go drop that drop a follow, drop a subscribe over there. And drop a ton of content on there to help you guys. So,
yeah. What do you think the biggest hurdle for a new Amazon seller might be when it comes to wholesale?
New Amazon seller being like someone that transitioned from arbitrage, or someone that is just like has never.
Yeah, let's say doing wholesale. So it might be. Well, why don't we do both? Actually, let's do both. Let's do somebody who's just completely brand spanking new, never sold a thing on Amazon. Like, what is, if you have to pinpoint one, maybe two things that is just like common roadblocks that they should be prepared for before they start? What would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I think as a new seller, like someone that just is completely starting out, I feel like almost the hardest thing to do is like find a good source of information. Not saying that there's not people out there that have good sources of information, but like there's so much noise in the industry. And I think that in any industry where you have this lack of knowledge or like these things seem obscure, right? It's like someone getting into crypto, right? Crypto is kind of an obscure type of thing for someone that's never heard of it. And so there's a big knowledge gap between those who teach it and between those who, don't know anything about it. And so just kind of like finding the right sources of information and also that being said, like executing on things and understanding that with all the content out there about, you're getting, get rich quick scheme and whatever you might see about e-commerce, like that's not the reality of it. And like if you get sucked into that ecosystem through hearing about these get rich quick ads or whatever it is, you're going to have those expectations going into it. And that's just the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is I think anybody getting into selling on Amazon or, even if it's entrepreneurship in general, like it's the biggest thing is the mindset, and just really having this paradigm shift of becoming an entrepreneur and just doing things differently than, a lot of what you see in your day to day with other people. But I think, if we're talking like wholesale specifically, a lot of times we'll find many of the same challenges that beginners face, just in terms of roadblocks. I think the biggest one is, just making the calls, right? Just making those calls, because the biggest thing is starting, so we see people all the time. They, have populated a spreadsheet of maybe 10, 20 leads, and they got their leads and then they just keep multiplying those leads, but they never actually go and make the call.
Yeah. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, right? So like, I think it's in two parts. It's in the contacting and the outreach. But it's also sometimes they get that analysis paralysis in the sourcing, right? So you're reaching out to, you're sourcing these different brands and you're over analyzing the source, right? So you're populating these leads in a spreadsheet, but you're over analyzing the lead. Like you haven't even reached out to the company yet. You know what I mean? Like how many times do we see that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a common thing at the beginning because, again, I think it just goes back to the information that you're being fed as a beginner is like, there's this almost mentality. It's like if you go into something and you think it's going to be harder than it actually is, you over prepare for it, right? And I think preparation is great, but sometimes like analysis and preparation and studying and all this stuff, if someone had the perception that wholesale was a super easy thing, I think they'd go into it with a lot more action and a lot less preparation because they're like, well, the chances of me succeeding at this are fairly high, right? Like you prepare for something, you overanalyze something that you find more difficult. And again, I think it's just the repetition of hearing this on social media and whatnot that wholesale is this model that is foreign to people or difficult or unattainable. And that's just the farthest thing from reality.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I used to think when I first started, like wholesale it was a little bit of abstract to me personally. But the reality is like it's a very practical model. Like there's really nothing abstract about it. It's just, once you have a framework and a direction that you're working in, it becomes a lot simpler, right? You know what you're doing. You source the brand, you contact the brand, you close the account, you get the price list, you rinse and repeat, right? But I think the abstract nature of it came from like having a lack of direction and just not totally being confident in, um, what I was doing in the early stages. So it's like as a beginner, just getting that direction, I think is the biggest thing. Because when you're pursuing any endeavor, it's like all of a sudden you have some direction behind it and you now are maybe you're honing in on brand direct wholesale, or maybe you're honing in on retail arbitrage, whatever it is, right? Then just getting that direction, it just puts purpose behind the work that you're doing rather than just kind of like wandering aimlessly and just doing the work, but not sure if your ladder might be on the wrong wall, you know?
Well, I think once you get that payoff, really is where you start to like kind of self check as to if your ladder is on the right wall or not. Like getting the results really, it comes down to just putting in enough time to get those results. And that's what a lot of people fail to do. We talk about, mentioning from coming from arbitrage. That's exactly the path that most people take, where they assume that it is this instant sales and instant gratification that you receive in online or retail arbitrage, and it's just not the case. And so they don't put in the work long enough to get the results. But once you start to do, you realize that, yeah, my ladder is up the right wall,
Yeah. So, Gianni's asking, do you guys have employees in the warehouse or just you guys? We definitely have employees. Things would not get done if we didn't, if it was just us in the warehouse,
Yeah, to be honest with you, we hardly even go there.
Yeah.
It's just, but it wasn't always like that, right? Like it wasn't always like that. And again, and going back to the beginner, like how does that look for someone that is just starting? You say, hey, I got to wear all these different hats in the business. I've got to, source the companies. I've got to prep the product. Like, how is someone supposed to do all that as a beginner?
Well, I think, as a beginner, you don't have a lot of different components to your business. Like maybe you don't even have, like when you first start, you don't have any items in your inventory. So you get one item in your inventory and then you are doing everything, right? You go from, maybe you're working a 9 to 5 before, now you're working 12 hours a day. All of a sudden, you're really not making a whole lot of money because the amount of money that you're making relative to the time that you're putting in it's just, it's not there. And that was, me and Brandon for a long time. But transitioning into wholesale, understanding that the work is front loaded. You do all the work in the beginning, and then long term, you reap the benefits, because wholesale accounts can be semi-passive income in the sense of you do all the work, you source the companies, you make the calls, you prep the products, you ship them into Amazon. Well, now maybe you have a 2-month supply at Amazon. At this point, the only thing you got to do is reorder your products, and then somebody's got to prep them again on the back end. So basically, like the more products and the more brands that you have in your business, the more work that's going to come of that. So as you scale your business, you can hire on more people, right? But in the beginning, there's nothing wrong with doing everything yourself until it becomes to a point where it's hindering on your growth, right? Like you'll reach a mark where it's like, all right, I like physically can't do anymore. So I can't contact companies because there's, there's all these other components that I'm managing myself. And, that happens in phases. Like we've been there in on many occasions with different phases of the business, but it's like, yeah, that's the biggest thing is in scaling is outsourcing and systemizing.
Yeah, I think, I think I've always said this about ecom is like, whenever there's got to be a pivot made, I think that your business will tell you when the pivot has to be made, right? So, I mean, for me, way at the beginning, there was just a certain point at which it made no sense for my time to do books anymore, and then there was a certain point at which arbitrage scaled to a point where we were like, it just doesn't make sense to do this anymore, right? So your business, I think, will tell you, like, you'll reach a certain pain threshold and be like, I need to change something. And sometimes those are big, scary changes, but I think your business will tell you. Same thing when to outsource.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, full transparency, like we're kind of going through one of those phases now, I feel like, to a certain degree, in that we are really trying to relinquish a lot off of our plate. I mean, systemizing and outsourcing is it's gotten to a point for us where it's like, we need to be focusing on the revenue driving tasks as much as possible. And there's a lot of other management when you have, hundreds and hundreds of products. So just systemizing and outsourcing and training and hiring, that's really been on the agenda for this first quarter. But as a beginner, you do it all yourself, like you said, until that pain tolerance hits a certain threshold, and you're like, I can't do this all myself anymore.
Yep.
Been focusing a lot on learning to be in the relationship business over the transactional one. Yeah, that's big. It's super important in sales. Any other book recommendations on your end?
I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I don't know which ones that I've recommended already.
What's the one you're reading right now? You said.
Yeah, that's I think I mentioned on one of the other streams, the Exactly What to Say is, if you haven't read that, I'm almost done with it. So read a couple of minutes before bed every night. Usually I try to.
Yeah, Exactly What to Say. Another one along those lines is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. We've talked about that one many times before.
You got a couple behind you.
Oh, yeah, I do. Actually, I have a couple behind me. I mean, both books by Alex Hermosi, 100 Million Leads and 100 Million Offers, are great reads. A lot of value in those books. The other one behind me is Traction by Gino Wickman, which is all about scaling and systemizing. I probably got like 5 other books underneath there that I could pin through. But yeah, Profit First also too for e-commerce sellers, a good one. Especially if you're a beginner. Not that I agree with every single concept in that, but I think it's a really good start for a beginner to understand, cash flow and inventory and things like that. So next question here. BR. Hey guys, I'm really starting to focus on brand direct outreach. What are the most important things to look for in brands I should reach out to as a beginner?
Yeah, I mean, as a beginner, I think that the biggest thing is obviously the volume that you reach out in, because that will eliminate not eliminate, you obviously will still get the same amount of rejection, but you're casting a wider net. And so those companies that are very receptive to you, you'll get more of them, right? So that's the first thing, is just reaching on volume, before even looking for anything in brands. Make sure you're doing that. But when it comes to characteristics of brands, as a beginner, you want to look for a receptiveness to work with your company. You also want to start honing in on that skill set of like emotional intelligence, and recognizing maybe some pain points and feeling them out. But the goal at the end of the day as a beginner is to get profitable products in your inventory. And so that comes through reaching out to as many brands as possible, trying to get as many price lists as possible, and then running those price lists, So definitely just honestly, more than even characteristics for brands, I'd recommend volume. I don't know. Maybe you'd say that, Brad.
Yeah, definitely volume. You want to be reaching out in numbers. Most important things to look for in brands as a beginner. So there's 3 main points of criteria that go into the sourcing process. Number 1 is, what is the average selling price of the product? Number 2, how many units are being moved every single month? So what's the volume? And number 3 is, what does their listing look like on Amazon? Meaning, is it a well-optimized listing or a poorly optimized listing? And if your product or your brand lead checks one or multiple of those boxes, chances are it's a go. But even better, if it checks like that last box about being not optimized, and it's a high volume product and or a higher ASP product, average selling price, that's going to be a great lead. So in looking for brands directly, because it's different than contacting distributors, contacting brands is a relationship game and understanding what their pain points are. So sourcing brands that you can visually see on Amazon that are dealing with problems, like maybe hundreds, or maybe not hundreds, but tons and tons of Amazon sellers, right? Or just pricing that's all over the place. It goes up, it goes down, or images that, really are poor or non-existent. Just their brand presence and cohesion as a whole is just not there. If you can go into the call with that ammunition, it's going to give you a much better chance of closing the account, because now you actually have something to offer the brand. Taking the path of least resistance too, just going straight for that price list. That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. All good tips. Yeah, I mean, we were talking about earlier on a call before this about a tweet that I had put out with a brand that sent me an email back. It's kind of goes along the lines of, as a beginner, right? And it was like all capital letters, and it said like, "Don't email us again. Take me off of your list. We are not interested in our online presence," right? All like caps, like screaming at me, right? And I was saying, I've been calling these guys probably about once a month for the last year and a half, right? And just to kind of tie that in with the tips as a beginner, don't take rejection too hard, right? Like rejection is just something that's going to come with the business model, and it's nothing personal. And so you talk about, again, what you said before with new sellers coming into wholesale, they take rejection hard a lot of the times, and that doesn't allow them to get past that hurdle.
Yeah. Understanding rejection is just totally a part of this process. Like, rejection is actually good. Like, I think the mindset shift comes when you start to look at rejection as like a game. It's almost like fun, and you understand that with rejection comes opportunity. Because a brand that you're reaching out to, who is taking all Amazon sellers, anybody can get that, right? Anybody can get an account like that because they're giving it out to anybody. There's no barrier to entry. But the ones that have a wall up to a certain degree, that are you're able to have a conversation with, that are open-minded enough to hear what you have to say, that's where the opportunity comes. Because as soon as most people are met with just a little bit of resistance on the phone, they, maybe they shut down or they walk away. But the successful sellers are the ones that push through that rejection, and they're able to close the account. And 90 other percent of people didn't close that account because of that initial resistance that the brand gave them.
Yeah, I mean, if you feel like, this is kind of one of the things that I always say to do. If you feel like the rejection is targeted at you, well, just blame it on somebody else. And in this case, it's the last few Amazon sellers that called them, right? Because the last couple of Amazon sellers probably put a bad taste in their mouth, and your job is to come in, especially as a beginner, coming in with that knowledge of saying, we're going to flip the script on what you think an Amazon seller is, and we're going to provide you with things that are actually valuable to your company, and benefit you outside Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest thing is, showcasing to brands that you are targeting a vision. You are targeting what every brand wants, which is brand equity, customer loyalty, sales increasing, all different things that align with what they potentially have as a vision. And you're just using the things that as a vehicle to get there. So Amazon ads, listing optimization, those sorts of things, as a vehicle to get to where you're looking to go. It's all an emotional game, it's emotional intelligence.
Yeah, and a lot of times these brands have no understanding of how that will get them there. So you convey the vision, but then translating that vision into Amazon and into the terminology and, and actionable steps, making that connection, bridging that gap is what closes those accounts.
Right.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Appreciate the value. When it comes to the brand you're reaching out to every month for a year, what's the structure and the basic script of how the follow-up calls go? I mean, to kind of harp on what Brad had said, like that brand hits all the criteria that we're talking about: high sales velocity, terrible listings, good price, right? So first of all, it's an account that, we say the juice is worth the squeeze. All right, you're willing to put in this effort to do that because of the sales and the potential payoff. Now, you're not going to do that on a listing that doesn't sell. But the key to something like that, that we utilize is to always follow up persistently with value. Because, it's like sending a message with nothing in it is a little purposeless, right? You're not giving them any sort of reason to respond to you, but continuously following up with value of some sort, whether that might be, hey, I see it's been 6 months and now you have 13 sellers on your listing when you used to have 6, and your price has been driven down by another 15%, right? Or something like that. Just consistently following up with value to try to get them to just at least open the door to be receptive to have a conversation with you. That's pretty much where you want to be at. But you want to also do your research on the listing prior and on the brand prior to see, where they're at, what their pain points are, what their structure looks like. Just put yourself in the best position possible to be able to overcome objection when you call them every time. But just always go in with some sort of value, I think.
Yeah, following up with purpose is important. What's also important with following up is, just consistently doing it, because a lot of times when you close a wholesale account or even let's say a brand exclusive, a lot of that could be timing, which you might think, well, it's out of my control to know when a brand is ready to start an exclusive on Amazon, or it's out of my control to know when they're taking Amazon sellers, or whatever it is, right? It is out of your control to a certain extent, but what's within your control is the ability to follow up. And if one guy is following up once a month and I'm following up once a week, and the brand, maybe at one time was like kind of wishy-washy, but they couldn't do anything at the time, there's a time where they might be ready to go, whether it's to move forward with just working with another seller, or more importantly, to move forward with a brand direct exclusive where they just want to, go exclusive or are open to those ideas. You're going to be there and you're going to be the top of the mind if you're following up once per week, as opposed to the next guy who's only following up 12 times a year.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you play every lottery ticket, you're going to win, right? It's like you're putting yourself kind of in the best position for when that, I guess you could call it, their guard comes down. You are in the best position to strike, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's the biggest thing is it's sourcing the companies, outreaching, and following up with purpose and following up with value, like you said. So that being said, if you guys have any last minute questions, throw them here in the chat. We go live every Wednesday at 7:00, answer your questions. Sometimes we'll do some sourcing, and find some brands, every week, 7:00, Wholesale Wednesday. How many years does that term date back to? I mean,
I remember when you like said it the first time, I just looked at you and started laughing.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what? You're like, yeah, almost like I was supposed to know what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's cool though. It's a term we came up with, but it kind of aligns with everything we do, just because dedicating that one day of the week, smack in the middle of the week, to getting the work done. And
Yeah.
if we leave it on one thing, it's to do the work. We got a free course on YouTube if you guys want to check it out. I'll go ahead and link it down here. But free course goes into how to start an Amazon business, an Amazon wholesale business as a beginner, and turn your business into a brand exclusive. How to take a wholesale account and how to start a business from business EIN, all the basics, to then accelerating your business into brand exclusivity, which ultimately for everyone, if you're doing Amazon wholesale, in my opinion, should be the goal. It's the next best thing to owning the brand, is being the only seller on Amazon. It sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah. And the more you do this, the more you get success from it, the more you will start to love the process. And that's the biggest thing for us. It quite literally is not necessarily even financial with this business at this point. It is more about the wins and the feeling you get when you accomplish what you've been going after for so long, right? With these accounts and with these brands. So you will fall in love with the process if you stick with it. If you don't stick with it, then I guess there was almost no point in starting to begin with, right? Because if you're not going to stick with something, you might as well not start. And especially with wholesale and a process that's so delayed gratification. But there is a turning point. There is that snowball effect, and you will start to love the process the more and more you do it.
Absolutely. Long story short, do the work.
Yep.
We'll see you next time. Peace out.